If you've been following this channel for a while, you know I love a Star Wars game. I've talked about most of the big uns, but for whatever reason, I've never got round to Star Wars Dark Forces. And with the release of Star Wars Dark Forces Remastered, introducing a whole new generation to swoon over Kyle Katarn, let's find out what it's all about. We'll take a look at the story, the gameplay, all the new features in the remaster, and most importantly, if it's worth playing today. We'll also reveal how this plucky little game directly plays into the Mandalorian. Come for the reviews, stay for the obscure lore. Honestly, what more could you want? So what happens in Star Wars Dark Forces? Taking place immediately before and after the events of A New Hope, you assume the role of Kyle Katarn, a former stormtrooper now working as a hired agent of the rebellion. And for anyone saying he's just a discount Han Solo, that's ridiculous. He's more like a svelte Dash Rendar. Anywho, the game starts with you stealing the original Death Star plans, Jin Who, before taking on a series of missions in the time after the Battle of Yavin. I won't spoil more than that, just in case there's anyone curious about checking it out for the first time, but what I will say is you can expect to meet a lot of classic characters over the game's 14 missions, including Jabba, Boba, and Big Daddy Vader himself. Did I just do the thing I said I wouldn't do and spoil more of the game? Was that a spoiler? I don't know, you be the judge. Sorry if I did. While very different in style and genre, this game would effectively launch the Jedi Knight series, which would spawn some of, if not the best games in the franchise. So, if you've been watching the gameplay so far and been thinking, this is just Star Wars Doom, you're not far wrong. Much like Doom, it's an early first-person shooter, actually the first set in the Star Wars universe, mixing 3D environments with 2D sprites. But to say it was just a clone of what came before would be doing Dark Forces a massive disservice, as it was pretty revolutionary for the time. LucasArts hired a small, relatively inexperienced team to design not just the game, but the game engine, aptly dubbed the Jedi engine, to build it in. This groundbreaking system allowed players to look up and down, jump, and get this, crouch. While this all sounds quaint by today's standards, this was crazy impressive in 1995. This allowed for more complex, immersive levels, which incorporated puzzles and objectives beyond the simple find the key mechanics prevalent in FPS titles of the time. Each stage really felt like a mini story, giving the impression that you were really playing through a Star Wars adventure. And this is all augmented by the use of great visuals, sound effects direct from the studios at Skywalker Sounds, and cutscenes that flesh out the narrative between gameplay. It's pretty easy to see why it spawned its own series of games, novels, and tasteful to questionable submissions on DeviantArt. As for the gameplay itself, sure, it's pretty antiquated by today's standards, but there's still so much to love. It's a fair bit slower than the frenetic madness of Doom, but this more calculated style allows for a much more involved experience, rich with puzzles and variety. Which style you prefer all comes down to personal taste, and you can also expect the usual affair of power-ups and items to help you along your way. But that's the original release. What about the remaster? Well, you can expect all of the usual graphical updates, now running at 4K 120 FPS. This makes everything pop and look better than ever, while preserving the original charm and style. When you see it all nice, bright, and oh so buttery smooth, it's easy to forget that this game is touching 30, which means so am I, and isn't that just bloody lovely? But what's arguably more significant is the improved controls for modern inputs. With a new weapon wheel and rumble, it's a little change that makes a huge difference to the overall quality of life experience. Okay, you've waited long enough. What is this link to the Mandalorian? One of the major enemies introduced in Dark Forces is the Dark Trooper, designed to be the next evolution of Stormtroopers. Tougher, smarter, and more suited for stealing small Jedi in training. Yep, these are the horrible child abductors used by Moff Gideon to capture Grogu in Season 2 of The Mandalorian. While much of the plot, characters, and events of Dark Forces might now be lost to Legends canon, it just highlights its lingering legacy that it can influence Star Wars projects all these years later. And yes, obviously it's worth playing in 2024, and not just as a piece of video game history. It really stands up as a super fun experience, both in the gameplay and the story, and I would encourage any Star Wars fans to check it out. It's a timeless adventure, and you never know. If they brought back Dark Troopers, could our boy Kyle be far behind? A man can dream, a man can dream. But have you played Star Wars Dark Forces Remastered? Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. I would love to read your thoughts. And while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe, and you can always visit UpsideDownShark.com to keep up with everything else we've got going on. Until then, my name is Tom, this has been UDS, and may the Force be with you.